My name is Danny. I run a channel called Dodford on YouTube. They're monthly documentaries, very high production quality, highly edited, creative productions that I put a lot of time into. They're called pop culture portraits, so they are documentaries about people I find inspiring in pop culture, in film, TV, music, etc. And they're, pretty much the lives and stories that I feel are impactful, that I want to tell in a creative way, hopefully in a way that no one's ever thought of doing before. I was always trying to push the boundaries creatively every time.
Danny, your approach to doing sponsorships is unlike any creator I've come across in a really long time. You've worked with big brands like Athletic Greens and Storyblocks and Epidemic Sound and more. And so I'm wondering if you can tell me about your philosophy for choosing the best sponsors for your videos.
Well, philosophy for choosing, they have to align as well as I can think of with my audience. I'm going to have a very strong audience of people already interested in creating and filmmaking. And so I'm looking for brands who can tick those types of boxes. I've missed in the past with some brands that don't quite fit into that category that already align. So from now forward, it's always thinking, okay, what is a Dodford viewer, and what's an answer they need, or a question they need solved with a brand that could come in and solve that for them. When it comes to then actively deciding how to promote these brands, it's a big head scratcher every time, because I think my priority and my main responsibility as a creator is just entertaining you for 25 minutes or whatever. And I was just a watcher of YouTube and TV and media in general my whole life before starting this, and no one likes watching ads. It's the type of thing that I was watching YouTube for years, and we are very clever now, just the way that people segue into things. And in other words, for example, you get that signal that gets alarmed, tap 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 through, you're skipping all of it. So I was always trying to avoid that when people are losing interest and the engagement is going back down to zero. Yeah, my priority always is how can I make sure I'm telling this, which is, in essence, is a complete detracting away from my storyline, but make it feel like it's still intertwined with something that's very, very different. And that takes a lot of brainstorming every time.
You mentioned that you had some misses early on. I mean, if I look back even a year ago, your integrations felt maybe a little bit more traditional, but I think over the last year or so, they've become increasingly cinematic. So tell me why that is. And is it because you're wanting to get kind of closer to the art, and talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's, it applies to my ads, but it's really a symptom of just how I view the whole channel as a whole in general now. Like I said, I'm trying to push the boundaries creatively every time and do things that feel more cinematic, feel high production quality, and I'm trying to make people forget that they're watching YouTube every time. And one way I've been doing that is actively having less and less of me involved, the YouTuber. If you don't see a YouTuber and you're just being immersed into a story, you kind of forget what platform you're on. And so I didn't want my ads to nullify all of that hard work that was being done in the rest of the video. And the reason they've gone cinematic is if I just then cut to a talking head of me saying, hey, I like this brand, support this, it's almost like a fourth wall break. You're being removed from something that should be immersive. And so I'm trying to now, these sponsored segments, to be as cinematic as the rest of the video, and that means coming up with some sort of fictionalized real setting that exists kind of in the same universe as the story that I'm telling throughout, and just avoiding any of that stepping out and revealing me as the creator and the filmmaker, which I'm not a big fan of. If I'm trying to immerse you into a story, I'm not going to let you sit out of that until it's over.
I've heard of other creators who obsess over their retention curves and fear taking sponsorships because it's going to decrease retention, right? And I've heard you say in other interviews that you don't really look much at your analytics. And so do you not have that same fear with respect to doing ad integrations?
I don't look at the data, and I don't look at the specifics, but I'm still aware of them, and I know that they are important. I just don't like to obsess over the specifics. So I think, yes, part of the idea of making the ads feel as little contained stories that still drive something forward, there must be subconsciously a part of that which makes me think and make sure the average view duration is higher, but that's not why I'm doing it. It's less about just making people sit on the video longer, which is sort of an arbitrary thing that I'm trying to achieve. And it's more about just how can I make people get through and still feel like they've learned something that relates to the story inside the ad.
You know, one thing I talk about a lot is that when a brand sends you feedback or edits on your sponsorship integration, you can't take it too personally because it's at the end of the day, it's a business transaction, right? And so I'm curious, how do you balance notes from a brand with the kind of creative integrity or purity of your craft?
It's getting easier. I will say, I think as a creator, you don't like to know it, but something about having a reputation is very, very important. And I think if you've proven something in the past, it gets easier and easier and easier to do that again. And, you have to take a few big swings quite frequently if you're trying to just be on YouTube and thrive. And I think some of those times that I've gone, okay, let's just go all in on making this ad feel as different and as creative as possible, those are risks. But when/if they pay off, then there's, complete evidence that you've done something different, and other brands can see that. The same brand can be like, okay, we trust you, do it again. So yeah, there's still pushback often on these types of things, but I do pride myself. Like, I think 90%, 80% of the last 5, 6, 7 ads, there haven't been really any notes on them at all, and I usually get approved first time around.
When they do give pushback, what does it typically involve?
I mean, it's usually the same thing. Like, I've gone too far in getting cinematic, and there's talking points that you still have to cover, and I've kind of just distracted myself away from them with trying to do something cool.
You've also mentioned that, it's no longer just you. It's no longer just a creator in your bedroom. You have a team now, you have researchers kind of helping you bring these videos to life. And so it seems like sponsorships are the primary way in which you fund your operations. Is that intentional or just how things happened?
Hey, real quickly, before we hear that answer, want to know the secret to unlocking reliable, recurring income and building a devoted community without all the headaches? Well, this video is brought to you by Uscreen, the all-in-one membership platform designed to make your life easier and your pockets fuller. See, I believe memberships are the future for many creators, but here's the game changer. Uscreen creators are profiting faster than they ever thought possible. In fact, over 70% of Uscreen creators become profitable within just 3 months. That's right, 3 months. Uscreen has helped creators earn more than $150 million a year and reaches over 10 million users. And you don't need millions of followers or hundreds of videos to start. Uscreen is for creators of all sizes looking to build a reliable, recurring income with their content and community. And talk about seamless, Uscreen takes care of everything from live streaming to chat rooms to in-depth analytics. They've got you covered, but here's the best part. Uscreen helps you create your own branded apps. Imagine having a Netflix-style membership experience, but just for your content. That's what Yoga with Adrienne did with her app, Find What Feels Good. It's an amazing ad-free experience for her community, all built by Uscreen. Now, if you're worried about the tech stuff, don't be. Uscreen offers free content migration, best-in-class customer support, and a dedicated success manager to guide you every step of the way. Okay, the most important reason that you should check out Uscreen is that they're just awesome people. I've had multiple chances to hang out with folks on their team like Rob and Srey at a couple recent conferences, and they just couldn't be nicer and more dedicated to serving the creator community. So why settle for less when you can have more profits, more community, and more freedom? So to start your membership journey with Uscreen, click the link below.
Yeah, well, I think the plan is now that the sponsorships are my way of paying everyone on the team, and that's something that, I know what's going out every month, so I know what needs to come in every month. And if we can get a guaranteed minimum figure from a brand, that's the way I like it to work. And then AdSense is everything else on top. Allows me to keep pushing greater. But yes, there is like a minimum line that just needs to get crossed, and that just makes sure that everyone else on the team is eating.
How does that feel? Is it more pressure having more people helping you with your creator business now versus when you started, or how does that feel emotionally?
It's a different transition for sure. I spoke about this just the other day on Twitter. It's like I've got a very different relationship to YouTube as I did this time last year, because when it's just you, there's no one holding you accountable really, and it's just your own individual craziness trying to push every project forward. And so now there is more responsibility on my shoulders for making sure that more frequently I have to rely on something hitting and something doing well, and making sure that everyone else they are helping me, which is great, but that does mean I have to also be able to afford them. And so there's enough a balance of the better work my team can do and the more useful they are, the more I have to pay them. And it's kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy, which is like lovely, and it's a real privilege to have the people I have on my team. But it is just, it does completely shift the relationship that you have with creating into more of a business. And it just means that you have to remember why you're doing it and why you started it, and just sometimes remember, like what it was like a year ago and how much worse it actually was. And even though there's more pressure and responsibility now, like I would choose today over a year ago, like any day.
Tell me about how you first started working with Gil. I'm curious. A lot of creators wonder, like, is a manager for me? Is it not for me? Or someone to help me find more sponsorships? Like, how did that start?
The way it worked initially with Gil is we had just like a really casual 2, 3, 4, maybe even a 4-month period of just like talking a lot and giving me, advice on random things, and a non-contractual, like anything he'd find for me and I liked, we would work together, but there was no sort of like obligation to work with each other. And that was a way of just sort of feeling each other out for quite a long time, and I wanted that because I was of the opinion of, well, I've been doing it by myself for a long time. Why can be a significant cut that managers ask for. So I was initially hesitant, but we felt each other out, and I just liked having that relationship, someone to talk to about it all every day. Just him being around made me take the whole business more seriously, and I think take away all the sort of brand things that he's helped with. Gil's involvement has just made me look at the whole system as a business more and taking it all a bit more seriously, and I think everything's elevated up a few levels with his involvement. That comes down to finding the right person though, and I knew pretty much immediately that Gil got the vision and he knew what the long-term plan was, and that was what our first discussions were. We didn't talk about any specifics about brands or integrations like that for a long time. It was just purely like, where do I want to take it? How could he help with that?
What I saw throughout, checking out his channel was just, he was very clearly one of the most gifted storytellers on YouTube. Flat out, period, end of story, like full stop. And so, I saw in him a really just bright filmmaking future, whether YouTube was his end destination, which I hadn't talked to him, I didn't know him, so I didn't know the answer to this, or if he had aspirations to kind of work in Hollywood. And I represent filmmakers. That's been my background for the past forever. And I was able to get in touch with him and talk about representing him. He had just done, I think, his first brand deal for maybe a VPN. He was starting to just kind of blow up. I think it was maybe post the Jerry Seinfeld video or Donald Glover video. At the time, I think he was sort of unsure, like, does he even need a manager? My pitch to him was, look, I can help you with brand deal consistency. I can also help transition you into the world of, filmmaking for the big studios or streamers. My background is, I started my career at a big talent agency. I've produced 2 feature films. I've overseen about a dozen series, probably have overseen about 15 million in original content spend. So my pitch to him was like, I can kind of help you on both levels, the YouTube level and the kind of longer term, more grand mainstream filmmaking level.
One really novel thing that I see on a lot of your videos is a bunch of people call out the ads specifically, saying, wow, this is the best sponsorship or best brand deal integration I've ever seen. Does that surprise you when you see comments like that?
Well, ideally, I wouldn't want those comments to come up. I think there's a low bar, on YouTube. And so, in my opinion, I don't think mine are that good. I know I could be doing them much, much better, but it's just because it's a little bit different to what people expect that it seems great, but it's just different, I think. And when a video goes up and I see out of the first 100 comments, there's 50 just talking about the ad. I'd rather you be talking about the actual video. So it is kind of alarming how, like I said, low that bar can be right now on YouTube for the quality of brand deals. as in like how you tell the integration. But my priority is just making sure you're immersed in the whole video. So people are clearly just picking up on something that's a little bit different out of the norm though.
Tell me about how you view the chicken and the egg problem when it comes to brands, because sometimes you'll have brands that come in your inbox saying, hey, we want to collaborate with you, Danny. You may not have a video slated. I mean, you've talked before that you have your pipeline of videos that you're planned out for the next year or something. Are you concertedly going after and saying, okay, this video I'm doing in 4 months, I want to work with this particular brand because it's going to be a perfect fit for what I'm talking about in that video? Or like, how do you handle like inbound inquiries versus going out there and trying to sign deals with brands that would be a perfect fit for the creative vision of a future project?
Yeah, we do try and look ahead as much as we can. Yeah, I think there have been instances where there's been videos planned for later this year and we thought, okay, this would be a good match with that brand. We're looking for that. I can't say that I do much outreach at all myself. Even when I was a solo creator, I never took the initiative. It was always, I was just waiting for things to come to me. But that kind of speaks to just how I am in general about everything. Gil probably is the one who's helping push things along and going out and, well, just forming relationships and making connections to people is something he's better at than me.
So when we're pitching brands for Danny's videos, I lead with a release date. And that release date, it almost never changes. So we tend to work with brands that you would kind of describe as sort of always on, as opposed to tying something to a particular product launch. When brands are launching a product, they're often a lot more strict with when you can release the video. If a brand said to us, like, we're interested in working with you, but the video has to come out on March 15th, it's just not going to work. We have this system in place that we're constantly, expanding the team and trying to get more ahead of these videos, but ultimately it's a little down to the wire, but it never goes past the wire. And that is really important to all of us. It's important to our brand partners. We've even had brand partners say, look, normally we don't want you uploading past the 25th of the month. And we say, well, Dodford releases his videos on Fridays, the 27th or whatever. So they've generally been good to go along with that, especially because they know they're not going to get a call on the 27th saying we need more time.
You've talked about how important it is that a sponsor that you take aligns with your audience persona. You mentioned they're kind of like filmmakers, creatives, this type of thing. Is there other criteria, like when you're thinking about, would this brand be a good fit? Does it have to be like on the nose, like restriction-free music for, for soundtracking for creators or whatever? Like, how on the nose does it have to be? Talk me through your criteria.
Well, I think a lot of another reason why I try and get very creative with the integrations is a way of making it feel universal. And sometimes when there's talking points from a brand, those are very specific and they are trying to target a very specific type of person. And if you can do that, but tell it in an emotive way that's more of a universal feeling, then that's something that connects with everyone. And so I'm trying to juggle those things where, yes, the specific lines and talking points that I get from the brand, those are being uttered and that's attracting the specific user that those brands want, but I'm doing it through like a storytelling vessel. There's a device which everyone hopefully would resonate with, and that's a way I prefer that, because I think I can think of many ads that I saw on TV as a kid that I still remember, but only because of like the story and the way it was told, rather than wanting that product. It's something that's deeper than that.
So Danny's integrations are very cinematic, and it's natural that some brands aren't going to really get the vibe. They might be after something that's a little bit more of a traditional kind of YouTuber ad read. And the solution there is very simple. We don't work with them. When we enter into a deal, it's got to the point where I've been very upfront with, look, this is the way Danny executes his brand partnerships. Here are some queued up links for you. If we're not kind of bought in on that creative approach, then we're just frankly not going to do the partnership. The other thing I think it's important to consider is that, brands approach Danny all the time. Many of them aren't a fit because he doesn't use the product or it doesn't align with his values. But we also kind of know this is a brand that's going to want a very traditional YouTube ad read. And there is no way that with the 12 stakeholders, this integration is going to have to go through, that we're going to be able to do something fun and engaging that maximizes retention. If it just seems like it's not a fit, then that's okay. It's not a fit. We would honestly rather not have a sponsor for a video than have a sponsor for a video that just doesn't make any sense, either from like a brand alignment perspective, or they're going to be too creatively restricting.
I think there's this trope in podcasts and YouTube that like there's these brands that sponsor everyone, right? It's like, and sometimes people start tuning that out or kind of get jaded because everyone talks about it. And so the fact that you have lots and lots of people saying like, wow, this is so different, even if it's the same brands, because I know you've talked about some of the same brands, like people are still saying like, this is so different. And I think that's just a testament to your creativity and super, super fascinating, man. If you could give some advice to an up and coming creator who wants to be more creative with their ad integrations, what would you say?
Well, I think, it goes back to the universal thing that I mentioned. It can be easy to get bogged down in that specificity of what the brand is asking for in their creative vision. I will preface this by saying this is something you have to prove over time, and if you are first starting out, it's probably in your best interest to follow the brand more. But still, like, I think you can read between the lines in some of those things that a brand is wanting to promote, and think about how can you tell that in a way that just speaks to you on a cellular level, that's relies more on a story and transition and change.
If I could give one piece of advice to brands about how to make their creator partnerships go smoothly, I would say give as much information to us as you can in the beginning in the form of a brief, and then trust the creative process. The way I like to work, the way Dodford likes to work, is we will send the brand a script that is often based on a brief, and then the brand will have a round of notes on the script. It's considered approved, and he goes off and shoots. They usually get one round of notes on the edit, but because we're working from an approved script, the odds of having to reshoot are pretty minimal. So I guess my advice would be two things. Number one, give us as much information you can up front about your goals, about the value propositions of the product or service. And then two, I would honestly build in a script step and really make sure that everybody is aligned on how this is being executed, how the product or service is being talked about, and then just kind of let it fly.
But on a technical level, how the idea for every ad starts is, I know where the gap in the video is, and that means I know what the in point and the out point is. And if you can work out what those two seamless transitions are, the segues between going from your story into an ad and then out again. You only have to work out those two things and make them make sense. You can just find the middle point, and there's just a bridge there, and so it just ends up kind of filling in the gaps. And that's like actually how it's done for me.